It's Ravs here. As you can see, the topic of the day. I wanted to do a lot after finishing Bridgerton. Didn't get the chance to because I'm a lazy fuck. But I think the distance was good for me. On my channel, I have a full reaction to all of the 8 episodes since it's all been digested. And I have a little bit of gas to spare. I got my laptop, so we're just gonna jump right the fuck in. Did Bridgerton season 3 suck? The first thing I wanted to touch base on was the fact that there was 2 main arguments that I saw kind of battling out online. Not enough Paulin screen time versus it's an ensemble show, get the fuck over it. The second main argument that I saw was it's too modern. These people look like they've seen iPads. That was something I was seeing a lot. Versus it's a fantasy rather than like an accurate period drama, so get over it. Wait, never mind. 3, there was another one. A big one. Number 3. I won't touch on this a lot because I don't want to be hate crimed. The Michaela versus Michael discourse as well. That big reveal. That was something that was really popping on everywhere. Really. So number 1, I do agree in the sense that there wasn't enough Paulin screen time, and I do agree that it is an ensemble show, so we should get over it. But, the big but in the situation is not mine. No. You know, in season 2, when a lot of people were complaining about the Featherington storyline taking away from wanting more Kate and Anthony, it's one of those things where as you're watching, that as a side story, for me personally, didn't really overpower or take away from the Anthony and Kate storyline. It was one of those things where I'm like, okay, can we get this rolling? Like, I just want to see more Kate and Anthony. But when we did see Kate and Anthony, it paid off. They kept you hungry in those bits, and then when Anthony and Kate were on screen, you were fed. The thing with the Paulin season, I noticed that a lot of the side stories had, 1, either too much weight, they were a little too serious. 2, they kind of dropped off. Like, I have no idea what happened with the Montriches, like, after a certain point. Like, what?
Where did they go?
When we were given these side plots, once Paulin finally hit the screen, they kind of, like, we didn't get enough to be fed. An example of this is in the last episode. After the reveal of Lady Whistledown happens and Colin is in his feelings about it, we get a lot of moments, a little will they, won't they, of, like, you know, reconciliation. And I understand saving the reconciliation until the end when we get the reveal, but the payoff after they reconcile is like I don't even think it's 30 seconds, but it's, I'm not saying I want to see them bone more, but like, that's exactly what I'm saying. No, if you are going to include that like 10 to 30 second Penelope riding her horse, you can't just like throw that in there and just like move on. This is the main couple. The moments that they do share in this ensemble show can't just be thrown in and exited so swiftly and so fast. I think that was both a storytelling issue and a post-production issue, because we know about the post-production and Benedict's little sexapades and how he was just tossed in and I was laughing my ass off because I couldn't take it seriously. I think the storytelling and the post-production had a lot of power in trying to weigh out the scenes with all the characters and making sure that the side stories do not overpower the main storyline. At least in Anthony and Daphne's seasons, we got a bit more of character development, but I feel like with Paulin, it was a lot with Penelope, but not necessarily Colin. That's something I do want to discuss when we talk about Bridgerton season 4. Number 2, the too modern and yo, it's a fantasy, get over it. This Bridgerton universe is they're creating a universe. They have created a universe. There's Queen Charlotte, all of that. The Queen is Queen Charlotte. Queen Charlotte. You have people of color, with ranks, with titles. Like, this is all explained. It's something that is, it's a universe that they're creating that isn't ours. So I understand the acrylics while Penelope's wiping away a tear. I understand the pop-in makeup on Franny's upper, like, lid. Like, I understand it, you know? And it's one of those things when you don't take too seriously, it makes sense. When you have Pitbull, give me everything in the carriage. Like, it's a fantasy, and that point, like, I understand, do not take it too seriously. So I kind of agree with the fantasy, you know, element in that opinion, but it doesn't mean that you can't ridicule or criticize a show that you like. Any media you're capable of doing that. Number 3, the Michael and Michaela discourse. So I'm just gonna quickly play my reaction to kind of like settle where I stand with that.
Michaela Sterling.
Private! I will say I understand the disappointment of book readers. Michael has been praised a lot. Book fans love Michael. People love Franny's story. I know the books are problematic. They're heavily ridiculed. Like, I understand the frustration of wanting to see that adaptation. What I don't understand is the people that are saying really homophobic and really racist things in response to those emotions that they can't regulate. That's not it. You have people that are attacking the woman that plays Michaela, and that is something that I can't even like try to understand. Like, the discourse ends. This is not something, this is not an opinion, this is not no. You are being asshole. We have two sources of media, two that we can enjoy, to kind of put this idea that Francesca's story has a lot to do with her infertility as well, and her being a woman. That can still be explored with a sapphic relationship. And considering me, like, girl, I don't know if I'm fucking fertile, and I've always had a fear that I might be infertile. But like, you know what? It's okay. Fuck them kids. Did I just say that? I'm sorry, I didn't take my Vyvanse today. I, as a queer person myself that represents and physically looks like a woman, can experience infertility. I can experience all of that while being in a relationship with a man, being in a relationship with a woman, being in a relationship with like a fucking frog. Yes, please give me Naveen. Hopefully they can kind of intertwine all of those serious topics. Hopefully, dude, I really do hope. For the ending, I had a quick note here. Overall, the season felt like a series finale in some ways, especially with Lady Whistledown and what they're going to do with the entity next. That is really interesting, actually. Like, what are they going to do? Because it felt like a series finale. I have like this controversial opinion that it would have been really cool to have Pollen as like the final season, but what do I know? I'm curious to see how they're going to handle two main couples, single character trajectories, and storylines making everyone happy for season 4. Because at the end of the day, we all know that not everyone will be happy. We all bitter in this bitch. I wanted to kind of point out why I think season 3 felt different than season 2 and season 1. Bridgerton's showrunner for season 3 was changed. It was Jess Brownwell. Bridgerton showrunner season 1 was Van Dusen. A lot of people are pointing to the fact that the showrunner change might have been why a lot of the season felt different in comparison to like the previous 4 seasons. When Van Dusen was doing season 1 and season 2, there was kind of like a focus on backstory, understanding character. But what I noticed was that the leading men were the main focus of like the backstory, the character development. Daphne obviously had, like, you saw her character development in the present, but we got backstory with Anthony, with Simon. And what I've learned and what I've heard about Kate's backstory is that a lot of it wasn't shared. I wish they dove into more of like Kate's backstory. But what I noticed in the first 2 seasons is that they focused on the male. They focused on the male lead. So the difference in season 3, Colin, you didn't really get much of that. You didn't get the backstory of the horse. We were told about that. Season 3, they focused on Penelope. Penelope was kind of the leading force of the season. You had her background. We know her family, and we know that dynamic. So exploring that, healing that was like the big thing. But what we were missing was like that backstory. Like, what was going on in their past? Like, these are 2 characters that knew each other when they were young. Like, you could have played so much with that. If he was dealing with toxic masculinity and trying to be someone that he wasn't, seeing that rather than being like told, that would have been good to include in like with past scenes as well. Maybe he's different than his brothers. How is he different from his brothers? How does he experience masculinity, perform it differently than his brothers, especially when he was younger, being told to act a certain way, that men have to be a certain way? That could have been so cool to like eventually get to know Colin, to get to understand his struggles, even though they might not be as tragic. And I think that's the big thing. You don't need a tragic storyline to have a complicated character. And I think they were kind of missing that with Colin. If they didn't want to play around with like a singular character in backstory, the most that they could have done is shown us that horse scene. But they didn't. And that's something that was a huge difference. Playing around with the past, playing around with storyline, and not having it in like a chronological like matter and way was something that was completely different in season 3. Another thing, huge impact on the storyline is the writing room. We don't know if there were changes done to the writing room, not just the showrunner. I'm only making this assumption because if the showrunner was changed, I can see the writing room changing a bit as well. Having new writers, having people that are kind of going in and out episode to episode. That's a huge thing with writing, especially script writing. And that's probably another reason why season 3 might have felt a little different. Another huge thing actually, characters themselves, especially Colin. There were moments and scenes where it felt like he was a different person. Like he's a different person in one scene, turns around the corner and he looks different. And the choppiness of all that, I felt like, again, post-production. But I also think a lot of it might have had to do with the reshooting that happened. If you guys don't remember, there was a point where a unedited version was sent to Shonda and Shonda said that it was a little too dark to have a couple of scenes reshot. And I think that kind of did a disservice to the story, because it's okay. I know they're trying to build this world where it's not that dark, it's not that deep, but having a little bit of that, considering your first 2 seasons could have been better for this season. Like, keep the dark. And you could see that the characters, the actors were taken months later when they're not looking the same way, put back in. That might have also been why season 3, you know, felt different. And yes, the obvious elephant in the room, the change of the showrunners, as I talked about before. All of that kind of encompasses my ramble about season 3 and how I truly feel about it. Did I like it? Yes, I did like it. I enjoyed myself. You can see it through my reactions. I had a blast. So to answer my question, did Bridgerton season 3 suck? No. No, it did not suck, but it was different. Overall, I think the show was fun to watch. With all of that in mind, how are we feeling about season 4? Season 4. Couple things. So Jess is still going to be the showrunner for season 4. We might feel a little differently considering we've already kind of christened ourselves with season 3 and it's kind of taken the bullet for like the change. So now that we are familiar with Jess's game, when we go into season 4 and she brings her all into season 4, hopefully, we'll get used to or we'll know what to expect. Season 4, I have a couple of things that I wanted to talk about before we get to the reveal of Sophie.
Get it together, you haven't seen her yet.
Pull up my laptop here. Benedict's character in season 3, we get an understanding that he is bi. He seeks freedom, wants to explore. But now that we got bi Benny, I'm expecting his character to go through a lot before he decides to commit. And that can be interesting if done well. Because how do you get a character that is so obsessed with freedom, this want to kind of be lost in it even, to suddenly start committing? And I think you need a really interesting character who is Sophie, or you need an interesting dynamic between the two in order to kind of fulfill that point A to point B storyline or character trajectory. I don't know if they'll be able to do flawlessly, but I do hope it makes sense. It's not like one of those things where each season Benedict has a new motive that isn't true to his character at all. In season 2, at the end of it, he was upset at AdSense. He was upset about the university. That is kind of removed in season 3. Even when he's drinking, it's told to us that he's actually happier than he's ever been. Now that he has like kind of no purpose, he's aimless and he's just wandering, having fun, being free. I don't think he is. I don't think he really is that happy. And maybe season 4 will be a moment where he's just like, I do want this certain thing. Maybe I want to pick up my art again. I want to see that in him. I don't want him to like just completely forget about all the stuff that we've been building up to in the past few seasons. He was the artsy fartsy brother. Like, I need more of that. And like, not just saying like, oh, like, you know, it's just a hobby or it's just something that he does. Yeah, but like, I feel like art also creates an idea for how a person thinks. Like, if you have an artist, like, you perceive the world and understand the world in a specific way, and that is something interesting about Benedict to really narrow in on and be like, how does he feel about himself now that he's just like irresponsible, has nothing to kind of like ground himself to, the consequences to that, the pros to that, like the things that he's gonna have to sacrifice. Like, I want to see that internal turmoil, but am I gonna see it? That's a question that I gotta ask. Another thing I wanted to talk about was, again, the backstories. Remember when we talked about Simon and Anthony's backstories and trauma? You didn't get that with Colin, But are we gonna get it with Benedict, or are we gonna be focusing more on Sophie again? Because since we had the female lead in season 3 be Penelope, and we focused more on that family. From what I remember, people talking about Sophie is she comes from a bad family. She comes from, it's kind of like a Cinderella story. That trauma, that tragedy, I feel like they might lean into that. I don't know if they're going to really like unpack Benedict further, unless they're just completely getting rid of backstories altogether like they did with season 3. And if that's the case, then I guess it makes sense, but it wouldn't make sense if they brought back backstory in season 4, and in season 3 it's like the lone season that doesn't have any backstory whatsoever, when it could have been beneficial. But yeah, so the big summary of season 4, what I'm looking forward to seeing: Benedict's character, Sophie's character, what background, how we're gonna dig in, how we're gonna get deep with it, how they're gonna manage all of the couples and do it successfully, do it well, and finally, like how Jess is going to improve in her role. Season 4 is going to improve and get better than, you know, all the seasons before it. And all of that is what I have in mind going forward. But now, I wanted to check out who the actress is that is going to be playing Sophie, because I know there was a reveal and I missed it, and I haven't really been paying attention much because, you know, school and stuff. So I was like, hey, today I'm gonna react to who it is. Sophie Bridgerton casting. She's so pretty. Stop it. Oh my gosh, she's so pretty. Yes, we're getting an Asian baddie. Yo, Bridgerton really is collecting POC. Like fucking Pokemon. This is so exciting. She's so pretty. Are you kidding? Oh my god, look at this. I already kind of ship them. I already shipped them. Okay, let's Google her name. Oh my gosh, she is fucking stunning.
Hi, good, how are you?
I don't know if I should say Annyeonghaseyo because it seems like you grew up there.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Yeah, that was good. Very impressed.
Excuse me while I watch every single movie and content that she's ever been in and make stalking my entire personality. Thank you!
I love it. 10 out of 10, no notes. I'm excited, I shipped them already. That was all I had to say today. I'm angry that it's gonna be like 2 or something years until we get to see them on screen. But hey, I guess anticipation will start kicking in at least like 5 to 6 months beforehand. So I'm excited, guys. I'm excited, and let's be hopeful, okay? Like I know a lot of us like might be upset about season 3 or like might feel a certain way about season 3, but guys, like it's okay, you know? Like one thing with media, and like we humans create it, we create it, and it's one of those things where like be easy on the people that create these things. You can be critical, but like let's not attack, you know? Let's chill. I'll see you again very soon. Bye.